And I'd like to share with you this beautiful sentiment of metta painted by a wonderful Sangha member. This one reads, "May you step over the threshold between knowing and uncertainty with an open heart." May you step over the threshold between knowing and uncertainty with an open heart. Friends, I'm so happy to be here tonight. Welcome. This is Recovery Dharma. My name is Julia. I'm one of the facilitators in this beautiful, beautiful community. And for the month of July, we are exploring wise action. And today, I would like to bring forward wise action with respect to one of the 5 basic precepts we take as practitioners. And they are listed in the Recovery Dharma book. And they're just these aspirations that we examine and we explore to keep our minds clear, to keep our hearts open, to keep us on the path. And I'm trying to figure out where they might be in this, but I'm not going to spend any time looking for it. But there are 5 basic ideas, 5 basic vows, 5 basic precepts. And if you're not familiar with them, it begins with, I'm not going to kill. I aspire not to kill. And I'll just share with you that one of my favorite rituals up at Sravasti Abbey, which is a Buddhist monastery in Newport, Washington, is during morning meditation. They do this prayer where they kind of kiss their hand and snap, and then they rub the bottom of their feet, because it is an awareness that we're going to kill living beings by walking, by eating. And so to aspire not to kill is a very, very tall order. We do it all the time, whether we intend to or not. And so this particular precept is to just bring us into that awareness of how tricky it is. The second precept is, I aspire not to lie. Easier said than done, right? We lie all the time. We do all kind of self-protecting behavior. We don't tell the truth by omission. We maybe craft a story or some information to match a person. So it might be a little white lie to preserve, say, the age and innocence of a child. So again, the aspiration not to lie is coupled with the aspiration to really develop discerning skills so that we can explore our own actions. One of the third precepts we take is, I aspire not to steal. And I remember one of the first times I ever heard Venerable Chodron up at Sravasti Abbey talk about this. One of the things that she said in terms of stealing and taking had to do with time, wasting someone's time, taking someone's time. And I was like, oh, painful, very humbling to think about. So the aspiration obviously is to not take what isn't yours, but to look at what are we taking? How do we take advantage? Even. The fourth precept that we're invited to explore is I aspire not to take intoxicants. And the reason for this is intoxicants of any kind can cloud and distort the mind and really inhibit the brightness and the clarity of our practice. It brings a level of dullness. And so to be very careful with this aspiration. Now, one of the things about this aspiration is, let's say you have a medical condition and you are prescribed medications and you're working very maturely and closely with a physician, you know, it's a trade-off. If you don't take your medication, you actually can't come to meditation. So again, the aspiration is the invitation to cultivate discernment and to know that your journey is yours. It's personal and it's complex. And the fifth precept we take is I aspire to not engage in sexual misconduct. And that's the one we're going to focus on today in our community. And we're going to have, I just want to bring some things forward, and I want to preface that it might stir discomfort because talking about sexual misconduct is always uncomfortable. And we can do hard things, and we can sit with a little bit of discomfort. I'm certain of it. I trust the capacity of your practice to hold you steady. And if you feel activated by anything that comes forward, breathe. Breathe. Take a look at your surroundings and know that you're safe. In the Spokane Sangha, because we provide a hybrid community, there's often conversations that are going on unbeknownst to me and Lo in the chat. And sometimes those conversations are unwelcome. And there are a couple of things that I want to say about that is it can happen to anybody. You know, we've had community members complain about men um, saying unethical things, saying sexually suggestive things, just engaging in a way that makes women feel threatened and uncomfortable. And it has also happened that some men in the community have been approached by women that have made them feel awkward and uncomfortable. And so it's very, very important to take a moment and discern what are your boundaries. How do you want to be treated? How do you want to take care of yourself? And let me just encourage you in no uncertain terms that if anyone at any time approaches you in any way that makes you feel uncomfortable, two things ought to happen. The first is the expression of boundaries. No, I don't consent to that. I'm not comfortable with that. Please stop. Whatever it is that you need to say to make sure your boundary goes up. And the second is to please let Lo or I know that this is happening. This kind of misconduct is not tolerated in the Spokane Sangha. And any individual who engages in that, if it's happening in the chat and online, they will be removed. If we don't know about it, though, we can't address the issue. If it's happening in person in the community, the person to come to for support and help is me, and I will usually carefront an individual directly. And I can count on one hand the number of times I've had to do this, but I've had to do this. It's important to create an environment of security, solidity, and clarity. People call it safety, but it's more than that. One of the things that I'm not going to do, and I want to be really clear about that as well, is I'm not someone who is very interested in creating a list of rules that I have everybody follow in order to participate in this community in a way where people's conduct is ethical and respectful and so on. What I'm asking each of us to do in a very personal way is to examine your own aspirations. And I'm asking you to call on your mature, wise self and to engage from a place that aspires to behave in community that expresses self respect and regard for others. Now, not everybody who comes to community has that level of maturity. And I will say that those who don't typically don't stay. So they'll show up, they'll say something off. If they're not met in the way that they want, they'll leave, but not always. And the unfortunate thing is the damage, the disruption's already done. And it's really uncomfortable. But again, I still need to know about it because I can be in contact with other facilitators and other meetings to make sure that we put limits on people's participation. One of the things that's very challenging is, particularly in the realm of recovery, is the avoidance to shame. You know, we don't want people to feel shamed. And it seems to me that we can operate in a very dualistic way. That is, we can call people out and we can point out their behaviors and we can humiliate them and shame them because we're not discerned in our own speech and in our own actions. And that is definitely unskillful and unwise. So that's one way of doing it. People have witnessed it, they see it, and they're like, yikes, I don't want to do that. So then they go to the other extreme, which is I'm going to say nothing at all because I fear the reaction. I fear a person's defensiveness. I fear what's going to go down. And that's real too. And that's why having support, having additional people involved really helps. And so there's another way, it's the equanimous way. And so it seems to me that when somebody is showing up in community and they are not behaving in a way that is appropriate to community, that promotes an environment where we can practice with ease and peace, that individual and their conduct has to be addressed. And it's often addressed by me directly. Sometimes it happens in community. and the person may feel called out and maybe they feel shamed. And here's the thing about that. As long as I know that I am carefronting this person and I'm meeting the interaction with equanimity, I know I'm not shaming them. I know I'm not using that language, but I'm not responsible necessarily for all of their feelings. So if shame is coming up, that's their work. If defensiveness is coming up, that's their work. And so then what we can do, friends, is we can also turn that back on ourselves. When I feel shame, what do I do with that? Do I project it? Do I blame it externally to me? Or can I sit with it? When I feel defensive, can I look at the interaction? And can I sit in my boundaried space with my defensive response? Can I hold it? Can I hold my mind? Can I hold my heart? And if we're honest, it's an aspiration because sometimes I can. I'm really good at it, actually. And sometimes I can't. Sometimes I lose my cool because I'm human. And that becomes an opportunity for me to learn, grow, and mature. So, for those of you online this evening, I invite you to create your own aspiration for how you engage using the chat as a vehicle of connection and communication. Aspire not to lie. Aspire not to steal. Aspire not to engage the chat if intoxicants are on board. Aspire not to use the privacy and the secrecy of the chat to engage in anything that is sexually misconducting. And see if your aspiration can actually direct and guide your action. And if it can, then your actions are wise. And if it can't, then the wise action is to investigate. Be curious. Take a look. Where'd you go wrong? Can you repair, make amends, and so on? The last thing I'm going to say about this is one of the things that Lo and I do in the Spokane Sangha is we don't often hug people. This is a practice of respecting this particular precept where we don't want to give anybody the wrong idea. And sometimes saying no is hard. People want to hug us, they want to embrace us, they feel the need for that connection. Sometimes it's really important. And so I don't hold myself to a rule. I will not hug anyone. That's not how I operate. But most of the time, we don't hug, we don't embrace people, we just don't want to blur those lines. And so, what we do instead is we put our hands in the prayer position and we bow very slowly, reverently, and deeply to people. Sometimes foreheads touch. And so this is something worth saying is if you are someone who asks to hug me and I say no and I bow to you, now you kind of know why. And like I said, there are many times where I've hugged people and I have discerned the situation where I felt like it was okay. but I give myself time to discern the behavior, to discern the action. And that's the practice. Friends, we're not practicing to become saints. I don't even think we're really practicing to become enlightened and reach nirvana, whatever that is. I think we're practicing to gain access to something called enrealment, just being more real with ourselves, knowing ourselves, reading a situation, trusting our own good minds and hearts, and behaving and acting in a way that simply puts less confusion, less anxiety, less aggression, negativity in the world. That's what we're practicing. That's what our aspirations are guiding us toward. And so as a community, let's breathe that in. Breathing in on this side of knowing what the aspiration is, and then breathing out the uncertainty that can happen. And the practice of discernment to access that wise understanding. Breathing in, breathing out. And with my hands at my heart, I just want to conclude this practice by acknowledging the wisdom in this space. I want to acknowledge the impeccable hearts and minds gathered here today as a collective soul. And I want to thank you for being such a source of strength for me and a source of inspiration. And so, to each of you, the sacredness that is you, I bow. All righty, friends. I'd like to end our practice with a beautiful dedication of merit from One Earth Sangha. And I'd like to invite you all to sit nice and tall and close your eyes. And just see if you can receive this. May all places be held sacred. May all beings be cherished. May all injustices of oppression, devaluation, and theft be fully righted, remedied, and healed. May all who are captured by hatred be freed to the love that is our birthright. May all who are bound by fear discover the safety of understanding. May all who are weighed down by grief be given over to the joy of being. May all who are lost in delusion find a home on the path of wisdom. May all wounds to forests, rivers, deserts, and oceans, all wounds to Mother Earth be lovingly restored to bountiful health. May all beings everywhere delight in whale song, bird song, and blue sky. May all beings abide in peace and well-being, awaken and be free. Thank you for being here, friends. Thank you for being so completely magnificent. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next time. Namaste.